Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for The Amazing Spider-Man issue 12. And, as you can tell, Spidey's got to deal with the Hobgoblin in this one. And it does not disappoint. We get some very interesting stuff going on in here, not just a battle between Peter and the Hobgoblin. So, we start off and we pretty much see the aftermath of what happened at the Oscorp warehouse dock kind of thing. Oscorp's just warehouse, and they're looking for survivors. It's pretty much like Osborn and Kingsley, and they're the only two survivors. And then we pretty much see Osborn being put into an ambulance. Let's see. And we do see that they're trying to deal with stuff going on, some bodyguards let me see. His guy pointed a gun at him and he's like, screw him. So Kingsley pretty much is being taken off. He's like, I'm not answering any questions. They try and give some drugs to Osborn, and Osborn's like, listen, I've got plenty of stuff in my veins. You don't have to do it. But he's like, listen, it's protocol. It's like, alright, just wait me when we get to the hospital. So then we shift over to the hospital, and Peter starts calling out Osborn. He's like, listen, it was supposed to be tonight, not last night. And Osborn says he thought he could handle himself, and Pete's like, that doesn't look like to be that. And of course, asking if the Hobgoblin did it. He's like, yeah, but was it Kingsley? And he thought he might die. The Hobgoblin was beating him to a pulp, and then he just left. And he's thinking that maybe the Hobgoblin left because he didn't put up much of a fight. He's like, well, you're out of practice, nothing to be ashamed of. He's like, I don't fight anymore. And Pete's like, okay, you're taking this retirement seriously? He's like, yeah, any act of aggression could lead to him. He's like, then let me handle this. Ned Leeds hates that part of his past, but I'll look into him. He approached me a few nights ago. He said that you were up to something, and I'm going to look into that too. And Osborn's like, you can trust me. He's like, then Data doesn't really bear that out because you just lied to me. And he's like, alright, point taken. And he says that if he does look into whatever Ned was looking into, and you're clean, I'll start trying to trust you, okay? And then Osborn's like, I'll take that, as he says it pretty much in a whisper. So then we see that Pete pretty much goes to Betty to try and get an understanding of what's kind of going on. She, of course, says that he's been working hard on the Kingsley story, running everywhere. She, of course, doesn't know where he's at. And then she starts pretty much getting into what's been going on, that he's been motivated. Norman Osborn working with Roderick Kingsley. It would be so big it could change their lives, but then things started getting weird, saying that Norman had them under surveillance. The baby formula was tainted, convinced that Osborn wanted Winston for something, and that he started doing something. And then Pete's like, alright, what is it? You can trust me. He's wearing it again. And then Pete's like, you have to tell me where he's at. It's like, yeah, let me put it this way. As somebody usually was in the habit of wearing or being a villain, and they're pretty much supposed to be reformed and then goes back into that, you really need to talk to somebody about that kind of stuff. So of course Pete gets on his glider and goes off, pretty much saying that he's got an office across town. Betty's seen the invoices. There's no better reporter than Betty. And he's like, listen, he's not positive he's going to find the Hobgoblin, but he's wants to be prepared, so sue me. But then he gets in there and we see that Ned's in there pretty much talking strangely like Osborn. It all goes back to Osborn as Spidey pops in and is like, Ned, Spider-Man, I'm glad you're here. They're all after me and Osborn's at the top. It's like, Jesus, what the hell? And he's saying that they want his baby, and he wouldn't have noticed it if not for the machine. And then Pete looks in at the machine, and granted, I didn't know what the hell this thing kind of was, but I'm glad I got a little bit of a primer on it. As it's like, listen, I don't know who's doing this to you, but that's the Winkler device. It's making you think you're the Hobgoblin. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I didn't know about that. And I love it when they put the little things and I can understand, and they don't need to do much. I don't need a complete in-depth explanation, but it's okay, he's talking about alright, you're just trying to confuse me. If I'm the Hobgoblin, who's this dude? As we then get a nice action boom thing going on before the Hobgoblin makes his grand entrance and smashes into Pete. And it's like, fuck, man, those are two good panels with just showing what's kind of going on. And then, of course, the Hobgoblin's pretty much like yucking it up, being like, you're not a spider, you're a worm on a hook. And it's like, okay, Hobgoblin, not leads. And he's like, I gotta focus, like, you see him go from, like, what he was kind of thinking about, like, Betty and freaking out over the device to then going into tactical mode, like, I gotta get my legs up. And the Hobgoblin's like, you should have left him alone. He's my pet. And now I'll chum the skies with your corpse. And he's like, forward language. But I've got to concentrate on not dying, as he, like, flips out and then gets caught by his glider. It's like, alright. And then, of course, the Hobgoblin's pissed. He's like, a glider? Is this a joke? And it's just great as he's, like, shooting off kind of, like, laser things at him. He's clearly not. Thanks, bug. So we see Osborn in the hospital, and, like, his assistant pretty much dropped off some work. And he's like, can't blame her for assuming. Just, like, leave it there. And since he doesn't really have much to do, he might as well do something. So I kind of understand that. And the Hobgoblin's just like, you have goblin shit. Like, what the fuck are you doing? And it's like, you think you could take a run at me? Sure, unless you're afraid of the new model. And it's like, alright, let's do this. As they kind of, like, go at each other, but Spidey's able to kind of, like, dodge whatever Hobgoblin's doing while throwing one of his spider bombs at him. And he starts getting the spiders in his eyes. He's like, this is... Let me guess, non-lethal deterrent? Doesn't even tickle. But it fucks with him enough that Spidey's able to, like, sorry, my weapons don't do permanent damage, as he pretty much, like, knocks him off of his glider. He's looking for something that you'll feel tomorrow. Eat this! As he tosses him in pretty much into the perpetual water towers that are, like, all over. And that's not, like, a complete dig at it. It's, like, it's a staple. It's a great trope. It's like, alright, cool. So we see that Norman's on his laptop looking at, like, the Gold Goblin kind of stuff, but then we see that he is able to look into Peter's suit and everything. Like, there's a feed and all that. So he looks in, sees the incident stuff going on as Pete's asking him who he is. And then the Hobgoblin's like, how does it feel to hide a man from his sins? Who are you? Answer me. Knowledge is earned, worm. Earned in anguish and blood. Maybe, but not mine. As they start fighting. Now, granted, this is kind of a little weird one. I don't mind it. I just usually, when there's, like, more kind of action with this, I kind of like bigger panels to kind of see it. But it at least tells it well enough as he's blocking punches, giving them back to the Hobgoblin. He's like, alright, let's wrap this up. As he pulls off the mask and sees that it's Kingsley, and Spidey's like, that doesn't make any sense. But you were with Osborn when the Hobgoblin attacked us. And then he starts seeing a spider sense going in, like, 10 directions at once. And he figures out that's not just 10, it's 11. Because Kingsley tried to, like, hit him with his laser gloves. But then he gets smacked from behind. And he's like, maybe you should take a harder look at Ned Leeds. It was my pleasure to put him back where he belonged in the Winkler device. One Hobgoblin is back. As, like, Pete's lying on the ground. And Ned Leeds makes 2, as we've got the reveal of 2 Hobgoblins at once, as they're pretty much getting ready to take on Pete. It's like, oh shit, that's, I wasn't expecting that. I'm like, hey, that was actually a pretty interesting reveal to go there, and it'll be kind of cool to see how that kind of pans out, if Pete is able to get Ned back on his side, and then it's like 2 against 1, with Spidey and Hobgoblin versus another Hobgoblin. And it's just a lot of different kind of ways that this direction can go. We don't know if Osborn is up to something and what that kind of entails. Pete might actually have to work with these Hobgoblins to stop them. To stop him from doing whatever. We'll have to see what kind of goes out. There's a lot of different kind of possibilities. I'm leaning more towards that Osborn is trying to turn over a new leaf. And that Pete is going to have a crazy kind of way of trying to have to deal with this. So they could go he could have to enlist Black Cat's help in fighting these 2 Hobgoblins, because that's going to be a kind of tall order to kind of deal with at this point. Not that it's not impossible for Pete to deal with both of them, but it would be better if he had some backup. So I'm like, ooh, kind of cool to see that. Oh, yes, we're bringing back the Hobgoblin. Not just one, two. So I'm interested to see what kind of goes on with that. We didn't get much more information on what happened like 6 months ago, so I would like more on that, but I do like the story that's popping off here with the two Hobgoblins, because I want to see what the hell kind of goes on with that. But again, hopefully we get more of a substantial kind of information drop, info dump, at least at some point. Granted, an info dump that's done well enough that it's like, I'm reading 10 pages of just like, boom, boom, boom. You don't have to do it that way. It just give us enough and figure out kind of what's going on and learning more of why Pete had to do what he did and how Osborn factored into it. But I like this. I can't wait to see kind of what happens now that we got two Hobgoblins in play. So those are my opinions on the issue. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.